Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Indeed, it is always a pleasure for me to be in the Employment Committee. I must say in my turn that I'm a fan of the Employment Committee because from the previous mandate I was rapporteur for a number of special reports, namely the youth employment. We presented here at least 3 subjects on the topic of the youth employment, on the integration of migrants, on labor mobility. Now we are working on subjects such as child poverty, long-term unemployment, but today we're here to present the report FEAD, valuable support, but its contribution to reducing poverty is not yet established. Indeed, the reason why I'm here as Dean of Chamber 2 is to represent the Chamber because the reporting member, Mr. Pufan, who is actually no longer in the court, for obvious reasons, cannot be here as rapporteur to present it. So later I will give the floor to the team, to the head of task, to present in more detail what this report is about. But just allow me, Madam Chair, to say a few words in the beginning. In spite of the overall wealth of the European Union, almost 1 in 4 Europeans is still at risk of poverty or social exclusion. The fight against poverty and social exclusion is at the heart of the Europe 2020 strategy. It sets the target of lifting at least 20 million people out of the risk of poverty or social exclusion by 2020. And the risk is highest for specific groups such as children and elderly people. The Commission dedicates 3.8 billion total with the national funding through the Fund for European Aid to Most Deprived for the period 2014-2020. And the FEAD aim is to alleviate these forms of extreme poverty with the greatest social exclusion impact, such as homelessness, child poverty and food deprivation. Compared to the former MDP program, FEAD has brought 3 important changes to the fight against poverty. It offers both material assistance and social inclusion measures. Member States could choose between these 2 very distinct operational programs. And of course, last but not least, the management of the fund changed from the DG Agri to DG Employment. Without further ado, if you allow, Madam Chair, I would like to pass the floor to my colleagues to continue with the more detailed information in the slides, please.
Thank you, Ms. Ivanova. Thanks to the Chair. I was the responsible head of task for this audit. And actually, when we started, we had the following questions. We wanted to know if the new FEAD was designed to be effective for alleviating poverty. And we subdivided that in 3 main questions, which is FEAD actually substantially different to the former MDP program in alleviating poverty? Then if the FEAD programming in member states is effectively targeting the aid FEAD offers, and if the contribution of social inclusion measures, which are inherent in the design to FEAD, can be measured. So these were the 3 main questions when we started the audit. Now, when we speak about FEAD, actually we speak about 2 very distant programs of FEAD called OP Type 1 and OP Type 2. And we found that under OP, so this is, an abbreviation for operational programs, under OP Type 1, FEAD funds mainly food support. So actually 84% of the FEAD budget still go into food support. And we can see that 90% of that food aid is distributed in 5 member states: France, Italy, Poland, Romania, and Spain. And then actually 2.5 of the total budget of FEAD goes into the OP Type 2, which offers a more specific approach on social cohesion and inclusion of the most deprived. Now, we found, and that is also identified by studies like the midterm evaluation, that FEAD is clearly welcomed by beneficiaries. However, its relative importance is not known. We have no data on its relative importance in the EU. We have no cross-country comparable data on it. And we have only limited data in the member states themselves to indicate the importance of FEAD. Further to that, FEAD offers substantially more than the MDP. It offers a new approach in defining the new accompanying measures, and it offers a possibility for member states for a more targeted approach in social inclusion measures. So that's definitely a positive sign for FEAD. Now, we addressed a survey to all managing authorities in the member states to get at least an idea of the importance of FEAD directly from those authorities. Only a few could respond to us, but we saw that the importance of FEAD compared to the whole activities in the member states that are social inclusion measures and any forms of help to the most deprived vary between 10% in Luxembourg, Hungary, through 30% in France, but up to 60 and even 67% in Poland. So we see that in some member states, actually, FEAD is quite important. Now, this is just an indication, of course. Overall, we could not establish the importance of FEAD in the EU. We also looked at national operational programs under the Type 1. So Type 1 would be food support, material support, and accompanying measures for the most deprived. And we found that looking at, in total, 9 programs, that the target population, the definition of the target population varies a lot from one member state to the others. We found sometimes very broad definition of what member states consider to be the most deprived. We also found some very narrow definitions. And we further found that half of the member states actually link the receipt of FEAD aid to some sort of eligibility criteria, mostly linked to their social assistance systems. So at the end, what you find is member states who design FEAD as a rather open system, where they leave to partner organizations mostly the definition of who's most deprived, still set out often a very good description of poverty situation in the programs. And on the other hand, we find member states which are very restrictive in granting access to FEAD aid. Both are absolutely permitted under the current regulation. Now, I mentioned the accompanying measures. Accompanying measures are a compulsory element member states have to offer under the OP Type 1. So it's not enough to offer food or material assistance. Member states should offer more, which can be like leaflets informing most deprived on help from social services. It can go to hygiene advice and further. This is what we understand as accompanying measures. Those are compulsory, but we identified that it's difficult to compare them because they vary a lot in their intensity and design. And as a consequence, there are no common indicators on the provision or the results of these accompanying measures. In general, we found that the monitoring of the link FEAD has to the ESF could be improved both under the so-called OP1, so where you offer food, material assistance and accompanying measures, and also the OP2, which should offer more specialized social inclusion activities. And under both, we think that the link to the ESF and the monitoring, how they interlink, could be improved. Now, this setup of audit questions and audit findings led us to 3 recommendations. First of all, we think that in the operational programs, or further in the ESF Plus programs, the targeting, there should be better targeting on who should receive basic food and material assistance, who is most in need. So better description of actually who you want to address. Then we think it is important, and that is also feedback we got from partner organizations, acting in the framework, that we safeguard social inclusion measures for the recipients of basic material assistance under the new ESF Plus framework. And thirdly, Member States and the Commission should improve their assessment of the link of FEAD to ESF and how actually FEAD can achieve social inclusion. This was a recommendation formulated quite softly because we know that at the end you will need here also partner organizations, and it's very important to get them actually into the board when you try to monitor that success of FEAD in terms of social inclusion and link to ESF. Thank you very much.